want to start a podcast, but you hate the idea of recording, editing, and dealing with expensive gear? What if I told you that there's a way to create ultra-realistic podcasts without a mic, camera, or even your own voice? Meet AIPodcasts, a powered tool that transforms any text into human-like audio with video podcasts and no effort. But does it really work? In this video, I'll be putting it to the test and finding out if it is just an overhyped tool. Well, if you're new here, I create videos about leveraging technology to grow your business and improve your online presence. If that sounds valuable, consider hitting subscribe to join our community. When you get access to the AI podcast platform, you can see that you already have a quick overview of all the video podcasts that you've created. You can see your audio podcast and you can also see the AI characters that you've created. You can watch a quick demo video that gives you more insights into what AI podcast does. So on the panel, we can see we have audio podcasts. And if you want to create a new podcast, you can just simply click on create audio podcast. Here include the name of your podcast. Let's call it Then you can choose the country. When you're choosing the country, it also influences what is being said in the podcast. So you can say, yes, in English should be English. You can put 3 people. You can choose the length. And you should know that for a good podcast that does well, you can take from like 5 to 10 minutes. And if you're like very, very big, you can do above 10 minutes. But podcast category, you choose what you want the category to be about. Then move on. Now, you can describe what we want our podcast to be about. You can either describe it through a little text, or you can pick a website link, or you can upload a PDF or a doc. When you're doing any of this gives a lot of information to AI Podcast to generate the text for your podcast. So here, let's just say, okay. We are good with that. You move forward. And let it generate content for you. And you can see this is the description of the podcast. The description of the podcast is not the script of the podcast. So we can move on. Now that we have 3 characters or 3 guests, so we're going to pick who is our host and who is our guest. So let's pick this first person as our host, and let's just put the name. And the other people could be the guests. Let's put other names. Now, the reason why you're generating characters, so these characters can have back and forth, can interrupt each other, can use each other's names while you're conversing. So you can see this is a conversation. So you can go on and on and on, and you can see this is a full-on conversation. If you want to add to it, you can add, you can make changes and more. So we move on. And now we have to choose a voiceover. When you're choosing voiceover, you can choose if you want to use your custom voice or you want to use an 11 Labs voice. A custom voice is voices that you've uploaded to AI Podcasts. But an AI voice is a voice that's already here on here. So now we can assign specific voices. So let's listen in.
Hello, I'm your AI assistant here.
So here you can see that there are multiple tags. That this is an Indian voice, it's emphatic, and it's also male. So you can choose and assign that specific voice to one person. So if you want, you can also search it by name. If we've used a voice before and want to keep using that voice. So let's pick another one. You assign for Philip, let's assign to Tom. And let's assign different ones to Sandra. Okay. Pick the male gender. So now we're here. Let me assign this to Sandra. So now that we've done, you can see that the button is lit up. So generate audio podcast, and you can see that it's generating. This is a different one that we've already generated, but we can listen in.
Hey everyone, welcome to.
So that is one of our podcasts. So if we can move forward, we can create video podcasts. I see that we've already created 2 podcasts here, which is being generated. But if we want to create one now, we click on you cannot download it yet. You can click on create video podcasts. Similar to before, we enter our podcast name. Our country, the language, amount of people, But here you add other things like your aspect ratio. Now you can keep it at 16:9. Your audio duration, which you can keep, okay, let's keep it at medium. A solo style, you can actually choose a solo style where there's one person talking and he's the lead, or the person is the leader and going back and forth. Or you can choose a panel where most people are talking and they all have different sections and different things to talk about. So you can pick the panel style, and similar to how we did it before, you can describe what you want to talk about. So let's talk about Tesla stocks. Now we move forward. And now we can see that this is a little description of what the podcast will be about. So now we can going to have to choose our characters. So remember that we put 2 characters, so you can choose from your pre-made characters or you can choose from your own characters. So when you can pick the characters that you want, let's pick 2 of our own characters. Next, so you assign names to your characters, so you can change this if you want. One. And then the script will be generated for those characters. So you can see that it goes back and forth, and you can see the audio that is put on them.
Hello,
and you can change that.
AI offices is the next.
So if you go with that, you can create your video podcast and you're allowed to generate. So while it generates, let's move on, pick our AI characters. So you can see that these are the pre-made characters for you. So when you're creating your video characters, you can choose from them, or you can take a look at your own characters. So when you want to create a new character, you click on create character and you can generate a character right from AIPodcasts. So you fill in his name, his essence, appearance, clothing, and voice. Or you can create a new character and upload a character. So when you're uploading a character, the only difference here is that you upload an image. So it's advisable you upload an image with a face, so that face can be AI edited so that it can become a character. You can include AI voiceovers, and when you're including AI voiceovers, you can clone a voice. This is important if you want your AI voice to be like you, to sound like you. So you use your own voice, you upload an image for your voice, so this will attach a picture to your voice, you upload a sample audio, or you can record directly to AIPodcasts. You can do any of those ones. So you can either do that, or you can go to AI voices and you can see all the voices that you have available. So when you do this, when you're creating a podcast, you already have in mind who you're searching for, or you can attach your 11 Labs AI account. So, and one of the few things that makes AI podcasts good is the podcast planner, where you can plan and schedule posts ahead of time. So with this, you can schedule a post and you can use the integration panel, where you can integrate to Facebook, you can integrate to YouTube, Sonority, or 11 Labs, and now all your podcasts can be posted at multiple times. So if you have any question for AI podcast, about AI podcast, you can ask in the description of this video, and also we would love to answer you. Don't forget to subscribe to G Tech, and see you in the next one. Goodbye.